that one back in because that was
all right. We're going to call to order the City Council's special work session for Monday, January 23rd, 2023. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Jamie, roll call.
Jeff Lucky.
Here.
Bill LeClaire.
Here.
Darla LeClaire.
Here.
Jason Coach.
Here.
Tim Petrie.
Here.
Jason Ring.
Here.
Bonnie Shamilinas. Here. Scott Stecklesser.
Here.
Adam Lewis.
Here. All right, we have two items under discussion items. We'll start with A, which is discussion with city staff and school district representatives regarding conveyance of city-owned property adjacent to L.B. Clark Middle School to the school district for facility expansion. Recommended action is provide direction to staff regarding the requested conveyance. We do have members here from the school district, and I'll let Greg back us into this.
We have the design team from Bray, which have been working with the district on their facilities plan, and also from district staff. We've got Mary Kay Slattery, the business manager for the district, and Adam Moore, the director of maintenance and operations. Provided a couple tables up front near the screens, which I thought might be handy. So if if the four of you want to go up there, we can have much better face-to-face communication and hopefully pick you up pretty well on the broadcast as well. So, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. We also have one additional representative, Ryan from Kapoor. Kapoor is the civil engineer working on the project as well.
Ryan, welcome as well. Feel free to pull another chair up there. Okay, and as I'd suggested, if the district's consultants would like to provide an overview, I think we're all pretty familiar with the L.B. Clark campus and the plans for expansion, but that would be a good starting off point, just a quick walkthrough.
Again, I'm Clint Selly with Bray Architects. The plan that we have is very similar to the one that we went to referendum with. Basically, we are expanding L.B. Clark and renovating the existing building. The one change in the plan is the referendum plan had the gym, a gym expansion off to the north. And I should also just show that north in this particular case is to the right here, just with the way the site is shaped, it fits a little better.
Bellevue at the bottom of the screen, Parkway at the top.
Thank you.
Yep.
So right now, off the west side, this is proposed to be a gymnasium addition. This was moved from this original location over to here due to being closer to the parking in this particular case. It was a great comment we heard during the referendum informational piece of, well, if you're going to build a gym, it's so far away from parking. So we worked with the district to kind of work through how we can better improve that. The other addition will be off the north side of the current gymnasium. This will be primarily classrooms of music, art, and then the fifth grade will be located in this space here. So again, the existing building then is as shown in gray, and there will be renovation within that space as well. In terms of kind of how the site itself is working out, it's maybe a little bit hard to see, so I'll kind of point it out along here. But the district-owned property is this red dashed line that is, we're obviously encroaching over it with the north addition here, and then on the west side, we're encroaching over it with the development there. So currently, that is the district-owned property. And then the city owns property to the north and the property to the west. Just some quick points on the goals for the site. For parent drop-off, right now the plan is to really kind of create sort of two zones of drop-off. One off of Bellevue here. So right now there is kind of a really short little horseshoe that exists right here. The idea is to extend that and allow for quite a few cars to get off, pick up and drop off. We are still showing this parking or this connection through on the south side, but the idea is we would likely gate that or control that during the drop off and pickup periods so that we control the cars that are on the east side versus the west side. And then our main parking on the southwest side will have again, another drop-off loop with, again, the main parking. The main entry and office to the building will be in this location. And then there is a current drop-off loop in this location that will be designated for the busing. The plan then is for a playground, so swings or slides or whatever middle school students like to play on these days will be located to the north of that. During the school day, that will be utilized as a hard surface play area with basketball courts and so forth. And then to the north here is kind of the area of discussion, or part of the discussion or continued discussion. But overall, the goal is to maintain some type of a baseball field facility. As shown kind of in the lines on this plan, this would be more of a varsity sized baseball field, reoriented up on the northwest side of the site, and then a football field extending down here. Another idea is to just treat and keep the baseball field in its current location and then treat it more of a what's referred to as a pony style league, which is kind of more of the younger kids. It's a smaller field, and we believe that we are adequate distance here for an outfield to maintain this location. This ominous looking blue blob here is our preliminary look at where stormwater could exist on the site. We think this is a good location for stormwater because the entire site kind of runs off in this location. Currently, there is kind of a bit of a grade change going down away here. So the thought is we could kind of build that as kind of a catcher, so to speak, of the stormwater. And it just seems the most likely location. Brian's been kind of feverishly working on what stormwater may or may not look like on this site. And had a conversation with him earlier today. We believe we can accomplish it with 3 to 4 dry infiltration basins. So again, the ominous looking blue blob would only be blue during big rain events for a very short period of time. So we're still working through where acceptable locations. We still think this is a great spot. There's probably, maybe a spot off of parking that we'll maybe have to investigate, as well as, again, finding a couple other locations. But one of the things when we've had preliminary discussions with the city is it feasible to have football, some type of baseball, and stormwater to the north on this parcel of the property to the north? And we feel very comfortable that we can accomplish all of those things on the site. Is that a pretty good overview?
I think so. Just a side factor, I live up in that neighborhood. For those of you that have marveled at the gigantic pipes that come out of the ground and spew water, storm water when it rains, I think mostly from roof drains, that will be hard connected underground into the storm sewer. So I think they've been kind of a cool feature. I've never seen anything like that. When they're flowing, they can flow pretty good, but those would go away. We did advise City Council when the referendum was pending of this interest, because certainly most of the investment proposed is at the L.B. Clark campus to address identified deficiencies there. I think it's fair to say from a staff standpoint, and we've conveyed this previously, the areas to the west of the existing school, the city doesn't have a lot of interest there, especially since we got rid of the tennis courts there some time ago, and those effectively have become an additional play area for the school. To the north, and Mike, our Parks and Rec director, can speak to this in much greater detail, there is an interest in being able to continue programming that space. If it is a Pony League style diamond, we just want the assurance, either if it stays where it is, that it really can fit between that stormwater dry pond or wet pond, whichever it ends up being, and the north edge of the parking area and the pedestrian ways next to that classroom addition. It's tight in there, and I guess part of it would depend, how does the district feel long-term about the outfield fence being right there and the potential for balls going over and either striking cars or individuals. We had suggested, and I know that I'm not sure from Clint's comments if the district is still considering it. Well, that also could be an area for high school varsity baseball play, because the city right now is in the business of maintaining Walsh Field as a baseball diamond, and really the only users of it since the Polar Bears left town a few years ago are the varsity baseball games. So, however, if Walsh continues to be used for high school baseball, we need a Pony League diamond here. And the football that was referenced would be a play space for the Junior Raiders, formerly Junior Ramblers, which are a wonderful program, but neither a creature of the city or the district. It's a community organization, currently play their games on the city-owned property next to McGee. It could make a whole lot of sense for their games to be taking place, practices and games right next to the middle school, because that's the age group, if I understand it right, that are Junior Raiders. And doing that could frankly free up the space owned and maintained by the city to the west of McGee School. What's that front on? Bellevue, yeah. That could free that up for soccer and other programming activity. So from a staff standpoint, if this stays with a diamond size for Pony League play, which means the district is not interested in moving high school play here, and for Junior Raiders, excuse me, our staff recommendation in essence would be we would be fine with conveying the property. We'd want to see the district maintaining the turf in those areas, not striking the ball diamond or things like that, but maintaining the turf and outside of school hours generally, allowing the city to retain programming control over that space, whether that's simply scheduling the junior Raiders, scheduling some of the league play on the ball diamond, et cetera. That's kind of the nub of it. We did question, how that stormwater pond works. It sounds like there's been some more homework on that. There, I served it up and I should be quiet now. Mike, did you have anything additional?
You got it.
That's what brings us here tonight. So, and that existing property line, could you highlight that location
Yeah,
again?
I'll just add, if we look at this existing property line, the question would be, well, what would the district need to move this, just for our addition? I believe it comfortably, we would ask it be moved about 90 feet north of its current location, if the city would want to retain this property. However, again, the question being, and is our blue blob, our ominous blue blob, the question would be then, is that a possibility to maintain that on city property if you so chose to keep that?
So some sort of easement.
Or do we need to kind of flip-flop the site around a little bit? And then again, that property line to the north might need to slide up. So,
And if there was a conveyance of the whole parcel, I would note there's an underground electric utility in front here. And that lies beyond the footprint of the school's proposed expansion, but it does run east-west in that field to the north. And we might want to reserve rights to extend any other utilities through the area that's anticipated to be kept as open space, depending on future development patterns there. So I guess from a city staff standpoint, we'd recommend conveyance for a buck. I guess that's the standard when it's a free conveyance, but school district maintenance responsibility and continued city programming ability at that location. If varsity baseball, and we're not here to drive that bus, but if varsity baseball could move away from Walsh, that would open Walsh up to a lot of other programming uses that aren't available now, in which case I don't think we would be as sticky about retaining any programming rights to the space.
I got a question. So you have Pony League size
Yep.
areas, and then you've got the varsity, which I'm assuming is larger.
Yeah, Mike, you want to help us out on that a little bit?
I guess my question is though, is that you know how we're fitting in pickleball courts within a tennis court?
Yeah,
Can you do that with?
I
the
think you'll hear
size?
that that's problematic.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
mound is the biggest issue,
Oh, okay.
is the pitching mound, so, yeah, and the bases are fit in and, farther out, so you just don't have the anchors and stuff. The infield's also much larger, varsity baseball can be, so.
Okay.
And the district has never had plans, at least to date, to develop varsity level facilities out at a high school. And we discussed that. There's some tough soils out there with all the clay, and just putting it bluntly, it's kind of a place where spring never comes until maybe July. There's a bit of a microclimate out there. So.
I have a couple questions that I'll kind of toss up. Is there any thought been given to the pickup areas? So I know our police department has shared, and I think several council members have seen that it can be quite congested in that area when dropping off kids or picking kids up or after dances or other activities. To kind of free up both of those streets, was there consideration given to some people pick up in the back, some people pick up in the front?
Yeah, I think in our meetings with the city so far, there was some police representation.
There was at the last meeting.
Yeah. I think in general, when I mentioned kind of boarding these off and creating kind of those two separate parent pickups, they seem to like that general idea. I think in terms of who gets picked up on what side, there's a lot of different strategies. You could do it by grade level, you could do it by last name. There's probably a couple different ways you could just organically let parents have a choice. Again, they kind of move like water. They go to the area of least resistance in some cases. So if the one of them is busier, they may develop the habit to go to the other one. But I mean, probably the recommendation to the district would start with like a last name process where to sort of try to divvy up and spread out the traffic impact.
Related, if I might, to Adam's question, that the largely new parking area is all to the west. Obviously, cars could queue up and students could get in or get out along the westerly edge of the school. Is there sidewalk that continues alongside that exit driveway?
Yeah, and this is kind of the sidewalk, I think I got blown out of this version, but yes, the idea is there would be sidewalk kind of along this long edge. This will be wide enough for a car to pull over to the side as well as a car to, proceed off to the side, and keep things moving. So, yeah, there would be quite a bit of queuing and space for students to drop off, as well as this, on this side here as well.
So I know that was a major concern when you guys were doing these and when the school district came here to present, that was one thing that we shared as a council and as the police department was a big concern for the traffic in that area, trying to free that up. Another thing in the videos that we saw was lunchroom not being adequate. And the reason I asked this question is it doesn't look like much has happened with the lunchroom. So is there something that I'm missing, or is there gonna be a need for a possible future expansion to kind of help the lunchroom area?
Sure. I don't know if we have that plan, but kind of you see this, there's a big rectangle here. And about half of that space currently is the lunchroom, the seating area. And then the back area is some additional classrooms, notably the band classroom. Those spaces are again getting moved to the addition. So ostensibly, we're kind of almost doubling the size of the cafeteria within the inside of the building to address that seating.
Okay. And then, well, I guess two more. When we look at this might be more of a Greg question, that stormwater pond, are we carving that specially out to make sure that that is being conveyed to them so we are not on the maintenance of that pond? Or how is that working?
Well, if the whole parcel was conveyed to the district, obviously it would be theirs. If we retain it, we would certainly insist on their having a proper easement that makes crystal clear who has maintenance responsibility.
Okay.
And I don't know on a pond like this, it's not like our large wet ponds where you have to figure on cleaning it out every 15 or 20 years. But obviously, if there were restoration costs that came about as a result of maintenance activities, repair and maintenance activities. And I don't know, again, if it's a dry pond, it's a little different, but still, you are fighting some grade issues. We talked about, could it move to the west? Well, the grade goes up there, but one of the challenges here is as you head north into that tree line, in that northeast corner, you're going downhill fairly quickly there. But that's why you have good consultants to figure that out. But no, I think we'd want to make it crystal clear whether the city retains ownership and allows this to be placed there by easement, or if the school district owns it, that it is the district's retention fund. It doesn't have any real neighborhood benefit or citywide benefit.
So it would belong to the school district.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the last one is I would be 100% in favor of that becoming a varsity baseball field. And I think as a city, we are maintaining Walsh Field solely for the purpose of the school district in the city of Two Rivers, which is not what we usually maintain parks or anything for. I think we could put that park to better use, whether it be extra softball diamonds, whether it be a venue for more concerts and stuff like that, or festivals, toboggan runs in winter. We could get a lot more out of that facility than having 10 home games at Walsh Field on the cost of taxpayers to maintain. And so I'd be very much so in favor of making that a high school ball diamond, and not trying to push the high school out. But at the end of the day, we have to redo something there with the ball diamond as it is. And I think it's better if it becomes the school district ball diamond and Walsh Field kind of gets freed up.
Is that something the district is still open to discuss? I know we touched on it 2 meetings back. At the last meeting we had, my perception at least was there wasn't a lot of push for pursuing that option.
I think, Diane was kind of, and I get it too, is if we're gonna put money into a field, a varsity field, we should do it at the high school. But we discussed, and mean, we have all clay out there and they've tried resetting the post and it keeps pushing the concrete back up. And I mean, we can't win out there with the getting a field going. And like you said, the wind, it's a spring sport, so we have wind and it's crazy out there. So, yeah, I think this could be a definite option. Absolutely, I want to try and keep baseball there for sure. If it's pony or it's varsity, you know. And I had talked with junior Ramblers, junior Raiders about football too, and maybe the possibility of getting a concession stand up out there. So just using that field for more than what it's being used for right now.
We had commented just from a community standpoint, the location of the gym probably means there could be public restrooms readily accessible with good design from the outside as well as the inside at times. So yeah, and the idea of some booster facilities, not the city's decision to make, but that could really, we did make clear to Diane and staff representatives at the last meeting that if varsity play remains at Walsh, there's a discussion the city and the district have to have about the cost of that because it's substantial. And it isn't just cost, but as Adam pointed out and as Mike has, there are a lot of other uses for Walsh if we had more flexibility there.
Does the team practice at the stadium or at Walsh Field too, or just games there?
I would assume they practice there once the snow's done. Usually spring sports will start all in the gym.
They're in our
Until-
gym usually at the high school. Well, it's, you know, the weather is
Right.
rain, whatever. But yeah, they'll be able to.
I like the idea of opening up Walsh as more of a multi-use. I like your idea about having concerts there. It's kind of its own goal. So that could lend itself to it. And there's so many different things we could use that space for. Another thing too is out by the old CCKs where we have our tournaments. Those are varsity sized.
Not for baseball.
Because of the pitching mound, it has to have a
Oh,
raised
okay.
mound. That's the big difference between it. So it's
And
your base, your base side length
Okay,
can be moved. I mean, you can put plugs in the ground and move the bases, but the big difference is varsity baseball has a raised pitching mound,
okay.
it's the one that really is an issue.
Which is,
You can't just bring that in and out.
In Vietnam, I think our max on the stanchions there for bases is 75. High school baseball is 90.
See, because I was thinking,
So the
well,
infield would be too small.
in Neshota Park,
Mhm.
we have a ball diamond out there, but we're gonna be reusing that area.
And that's too small too, because I think their home run price is like 225.
Because I
High
was
school
thinking,
baseball has, for softball, it's 190 to 220 you have to be. Baseball, I think, goes all the way up. I think you have to be 275 maybe in order to host games. So they hit the ball further, so you have to have a further home run fence and further bases.
because I was thinking, you know, with the tournaments, just in case there's not enough space and we need to have like another area. But it doesn't sound like we could really do that out by Elm Clark.
You could put the high school baseball or a pony field out at Oak Park. You could still do this.
Yeah, that's what I picked up, the plans, and we still show the ability to place a varsity field there or Pony League.
So the varsity field, that's basically for high school.
Mhm.
Okay, so if they get a brand new field out there, we have Walsh Field.
Yeah.
I like that.
To many different things.
there would be some renovation costs of Walsh because you'd have to bring in the infield a little bit, take out the mound, and all that kind of stuff, but yeah.
Plus the climate is better here. That's the biggest thing.
It really is.
Are you gonna have a net or something to keep balls from going into that pond? And are they gonna be watching junior high boys to keep them from going into the pond? And how responsible is it gonna be on our, you know, if some damage is done? Or someone gets injured?
Tell us about the pond a little bit.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. It's essentially, it's a depression that's dry. It's just gonna hold water during rain event. Once it stops raining, it's gonna have a little bit of water in it that'll slowly release over time. So typically, they're designed to draw down the water within 24 hours. So it doesn't have water in it for very long.
you think it's gonna, how big, this is not gonna be a real retention pond then, is that correct? Because it's not, it's just a puddle.
It's,
It's a dry pond, not wet.
Well, I just-
yeah, it'll have kind of native vegetation in it, so there'll be, plants that they, the district won't mow it or the city won't mow it. It'll be something that, again, plants that are meant to help with the infiltration and speed up the process of the water going away, and also kind of the cleanup of the water as it's
It's like a large rain garden.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'd imagine some sort of fence or barrier around it, so people aren't going into it, would be my guess. If we're inviting young kids to play at a park there, I don't think that anything but a fence would stop them from going in there.
How deep is it gonna be?
Typically, they're around 3 to 4 feet deep, but they can vary. So
And that's not, and it's gonna be graded, right? Going
Yeah.
in. I don't see how it can really,
it'll have a steady slope down and it'll be about 4 feet deep. And typically, they're heavily planted on the side slopes and the bottom, so they look full, so they're not inviting.
so it's kind of a natural landscape. I mean,
Correct.
you're gonna find that out, in nature too, so I don't see why.
I mean, most rain gardens I've seen at parks do have some sort of a barrier around it. Like if you go to Manitowoc, they have a rain garden and they have a wood fence around it just to protect people from going in there, because I mean, they can also cause havoc on the natural vegetation. You start pulling that stuff out, and all of a sudden the pond's not gonna do what it's supposed to do. So I think it's a good idea to have something around there to prevent that from happening, so you know it's gonna happen.
We could use it to our advantage, or the school system can, to make it look even more attractive. So it's,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an ugly fence.
right,
It can be a nice wooded fence, kind of like what we have along the buffer of Mariners Trail. Going out towards the lake, you have that wood that's got like 2 pieces.
Of course,
I'm not very nice.
every time a ball goes over the infield fence, and then if not during the game, somebody's gonna be back to retrieve it, because that's just, it's a great place to pick up a free ball. I don't know that the school district didn't come into this whole thing with relocating a competition baseball field as part of your capital plan, but, I can see a scenario where the city could still say, to each of the property for $1, we do want to see the district doing the turf maintenance, doing whatever an adequate standard is. I'm not gonna say our standard has been stellar as the city, but maintain the turf at district expense. We would do the field marking, and that is needed specifically for our programmed activities. And the city would expect for the open space off that's, not part of, that's beyond where the magic line would be as to what you actually need for your buildings. We would presume, other than during the school days, to have reign, if you will, over the programming of that space. But then, and we can have a separate discussion about Walsh Field, because I don't think that's a sustainable thing the way it's going. On the other hand, if the district were to ultimately make a decision to cease the use of Walsh, then maybe our presumption of being able to control the programming of this space could just go away at that point. That would still leave that issue open, but there'd be a path there. And I think we both want to work with the Junior Raiders program. And I can't imagine either the city or the school not saying, well, yeah, you can do your Junior Raiders practice and play there. But if we're doing the programming, I assume they schedule it now through Parks and Rec for the field up next to McGee. We would presume to be the scheduling entity. Again, for as long as we've got Pony League here and Walsh is the community's high school baseball field. Either way, I don't see a real compelling reason for the city to have to keep owning this property. That, again, is ultimately the council's call.
We've always worked or tried, I have at least, with the city, the schools in the city should be one, our swimming pools, all that stuff. We figured that out to have that during the week council, but even your soccer programs, things like that, like it's, we have soccer programs for Phi Ed, and we'll come over and paint so that you guys can use it on Saturdays or whatever. We've always done that, and it's not, even if it is under our name, it's not that you guys can't have your programs there on Saturdays or whatever it is.
It's just when, on those rare occasions, when push comes to shove,
Yep.
ownership is gonna dictate.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes push comes to shove.
Um,
Rarely.
Yeah.
We're all serving the same taxpayers for the most part.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's here to be hard. We're just trying to figure out the best uses for everything. And obviously, some of us, at least, and I know me for one, sees not a lot of use at Walsh Field either. How do we capitalize on that? But at the same time, we need to have high school go somewhere. Right. And if this might be the perfect time to do that, seeing something has to get done with the field at Elton Clark anyway, maybe it's the best idea to try and do that now.
Kind of benefits everyone.
Does anyone else have any other questions or input? Jeff?
I would like to see one more thing happen, not just here, but because the school district put the cart before the horse and actually got the referendum passed before they secured the land, we do have a little bit of leverage, so I would like to see them actually take care of all of the lawn cutting and maintenance at McGee, because that's all city land there too, which the school does use from time to time. And they're already there to be cutting their own lawn, so what is that other 2 acres? That way we don't have to go in there. And they're taking this care of this as well. It takes a lot off of our plate as far as maintenance on that stuff. We don't have to be running people in. Because had that all been privately owned land, this whole conversation would be a lot different.
It's working out pretty well the way it is, right?
We don't really have programs at McGee and at Field. It's usually just junior Raiders and soccer programs right now.
Yeah, our kids are down here now.
So it's not really used at all by the schools, to be honest with you, over at McGee.
Soccer programs aren't completely through there, partially through.
So that's.
It's been at Clark for a while.
That's
And it's
all
been at
part of
Clark.
And our FIA classes are.
I'm not aware of any school programming taking place in that field that we need. It's all ours, right?
Anybody else?
It's not part of staff's recommendation, but obviously the council's got the flexibility if you wish to pursue that.
Anybody else? No? Anything further from city staff?
I guess this is a discussion item, but I'd be interested in getting some feedback. Again, there's no one ideal framework for this, but I'd suggest again that we look at conveying from the city to the school district all of the property in question that's adjacent to LB Clark, currently owned by the city. However, as to the area that lies north of the school's facilities, I guess I'd say everything north of that sidewalk and the proposed playground would be the school's maintenance responsibility. It would be maintained pretty much status quo, depending on what our decision is about whether the ball diamond can still work there. But the school district would maintain it, with the exception of city doing field marking and things that are specific to program activities there. And the city would, outside of normal school hours, be the entity that schedules and has jurisdiction over scheduling of that space. And if at a point in time, the district wished to bring its varsity baseball diamond here, which would free up any varsity baseball activity at Walsh, then at that point, the city would be willing to relinquish at least that control, if you will, or scheduling of these facilities.
Well, rather than to the future, why don't we discuss that now?
That'd be great if the
because-
district feels.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it's up to you all to figure out if you really want to do that and then come back.
Well, I think that they'll probably have to go back and have a meeting would be my guess. I think we're kind of throwing ideas. That's my guess. I don't think you're gonna overstep what Diane may want, but, or the school board in general.
Well, and as Greg said, the baseball field was not part of the budget for this, so in fairness to the budget for the project, we don't have that earmarked.
I hear what you're saying, Tracy, and if it worked out, that would be great. I'm just not presuming that's a quick, easy decision.
All right.
I mean, it's not part of the budget, I'm sure, obviously, but at the end of the day, they have to do something with the field anyway. You can't take a field away and not put one back as part of the project, so it has somewhat become part of the budget.
Well, in the effect that we can leave it where it is, I mean, we believe the field could remain almost intact as its current location and serve as a bit of a pony field. Again, probably needs some improvement, but in terms of the varsity aspect of it, the varsity quality of field, that's the component where.
I mean, I'd leave that up to Parks and Rec, but I'd be real hesitant to know that you took 90 feet away and that's gonna be the same fence. That was out there last year when I applied.
Adam and the guys went out and measured, they had 265 to a new fence.
Yeah, 270, yeah, it's marked at 275, so actually it isn't really interfering. So it goes to 275 is right about here, right in this area, so it loops around, so that's actually, I was surprised by how much room there actually is.
So it would work,
I think we were all surprised by how much room it was.
Yeah.
and then I still would have some concerns with that pond being butt up against it, because there is not a whole lot of room back there. And when you get people seating, because I mean, you see where the turf or where the dirt ends, you have a fence and then you have a bench area that's probably another 3 or 4 feet for the players, and then behind that is when you first get any kind of seating for anyone to watch, and they're gonna be butt up against a stormwater, not necessarily retention pond, but a rain garden. So I guess I would have concern
Yeah,
with that with city programming.
We would probably relook, if the current field is kept as a pony field, we probably may not put the pond in that location. We may shuffle some things around again, we'll have to work through, but I don't know that I would agree, I don't know that that's the right spot for it, if that's the case. But then again, I think for the future, we probably wanna locate it so that there is the flexibility for if we ever did wanna move here, we'd have that. District would have that ability at some point.
I guess I'm sitting here wondering, I have no idea what the net cost of recreating Pulling League Field at that northwest corner would be. It's a whole lot more ideal as far as families coming there and being proximate to the playground equipment, the much more extensive off-street parking than it is down in the corner where it is, especially if it's got to share that corner with that pond.
Right, because we had parking off the gym before that.
Yeah.
It belonged to the school district, might
Pretty
be,
handy.
yes, but it was right there for people to park in, and now that's kind of gone. So there's been reduced parking for our leagues right in that same area. I mean, as a council, we'll have to, we somewhat have to, I guess, craft out how we want any kind of programming down there to look. Like Greg said, there's more parking. If you move the diamond up to the west side, where it's kind of shown in black, versus having it down on the east side where it currently is, and kind of a lot of the parking taken away.
And we're not here tonight about spending the district's money.
No.
necessarily, But that, I'll just suggest, with what I'd offered earlier as a possible action of the council, not final action tonight, but a future meeting. A condition could be added that prior to the conveyance, a commitment is made to replicate or to do the Pony League field and relocate it. I don't know, Mike, the outfield fence for that now is snow fence. Isn't it?
Yeah.
You basically got a backstop and maybe some infield chain link
There's
fencing.
not much to it.
And really, to make the football field or the football programming work, we would anticipate a removable fence in any of these scenarios, even if it is a varsity baseball field, because you can see it clearly overlaps.
Yep, that would make the most sense for the amount of room that we have there.
But I don't, it's a little early to tell, but is there a strong feeling that if Pony League play stays there, City Rec play, that it would be far better to have that diamond relocated?
I would feel that way.
If you're gonna relocate the diamond, though, you should make it varsity field.
No, that would be,
I would like to see that too.
that'd be outside of our
I think
control.
that would make sense, otherwise you know where it is.
Even if you meet it where it is,
Well,
we'll
you
have
move the-
reduced
you move the
parking.
pond.
Yeah, you'd have to do something with the pond and.
You got all the parking on this side here, that's all gonna be added.
Right, well, not really, that front parking's there, but there was parking all the way up and down that gym.
That's true,
And that's
most of
gone.
it's connected, I think, to the back.
Right, so
But
it's
still,
actually
you're gonna
going.
have all that parking front.
My idea was the bus pickup drop off up there, we could reline and have parking spaces put in there, kind of, for sporting things in that field, so that we could still have parking.
Okay, so I guess we should kind of give the school board or the school district some kind of direction as to what we're probably thinking. So they can go back and have discussion. I guess show of hands if you want to see the field relocated from its current position as is up to where it's sketched in to the west, which is on top of our screen. Show of hands for that to be at least relocated in some way, shape, or form.
Repeat that one last time.
Pony or varsity?
I think either way, and I think the next question will be, does that become Pony or varsity?
Okay, so we're talking about putting it over on the west.
Yep, up kind of where, yep, there you go, right where it's.
And leave the pond where it's at, and then
Yep.
below it is gonna be football.
Kind of like how they have it.
Okay.
If I might, probably the first question, assuming varsity doesn't happen here, are people comfortable with the Pony League field staying, or do you want to relocate it?
That was kind of the first question.
Yeah.
Should we relocate it, a period? And show of hands for that.
Doesn't matter to me either way.
And then if you prefer that to be a varsity field versus a Pony field, if you prefer it to be a varsity field, raise your hand.
Understanding the city can't.
We can't, we
force
can't,
it, but
right.
We would support.
It would be strong support for this.
The only thing you could do is not convey the land, but I don't think we're here to be that either. I don't think that's our
I don't
job.
want to do that.
I think we're just encouraging. I don't think we're here to say, hey, if you don't do exactly what we say, there go your plans.
I never have to have another city one more up there ever again.
I don't think that's anyone's intent up here.
Yeah.
But I think it is very much so encouraged.
And what, with that as background, a majority of the council, as this property is conveyed, wants to see, again, within our control in the state's Pony League, want to see that facility, Pony League facility relocated to the west. And that leaves wide open for the school district a decision now or in the future about Walsh. Sooner would be nicer than later, but
The Pony League field could kind of be a tickler, I guess, possibly, if it's not moved to the top versus its current location, because it's gonna be tough for our programming.
the
Trying
Pony
to
League
free up
can-
Walsh,
What's that? And
free up
right.
Walsh, and that's huge.
But in the meantime, if that's a bare minimum, we want, if it stays Pony League, we want it relocated.
Right, as a
City would be-
condition.
The council would be very supportive of the idea of seeing varsity baseball move away from Walsh. Try to work to facilitate that.
But as a condition, it would get moved as the transfer, is what I was understanding.
I didn't understand.
As a condition of the transfer of land, we would want the field to be moved.
Oh, the Pony League field at minimum. Yeah,
At minimum.
yeah. And then beyond that, again, if it stays Pony League and we're relying on it, Walsh is still varsity baseball. The city would want to see the district maintain it. City have priority over scheduling outside of school hours, the things I said earlier. But then if at a point in time, either sooner or later, the district wishes to relocate varsity baseball to this property and cease use of Walsh, then the city, and Mike, is that okay with you? The city wouldn't presume to have any kind of programming authority over the space. Obviously, we cooperate, but
That's correct.
is that likewise supported?
For example, if they had the varsity baseball field, and we're like, hey, we'd like to bring the polar bears in, we'd have to go through that in the book and do whatever our expectations for this.
How much do they pay for the use of Walsh Field?
We've not been charged, and frankly, if we got a beef with that, shame on us historically as well. Right, as, we pay for a janitor in high school, the pool is used after hours and things. We have a great relationship, but clearly Walsh is a one-way street right
Okay,
now.
so
Not literally.
if we are good with, the reconfiguration of the school itself, and we're good with having the fields to the north, we're giving that property to the school district, or are we getting a buck for it? I'm just curious, because it just seems that if we're gonna turn that land over to the school district, I think we should be able to say that you can have this land, but we would really like to have that varsity, drive it out there, whatever. I don't see why we would have to wait on that. I think that should be part of the bargain right now.
Maybe we should start with, that's not part of their budget. And maybe what we need to do is ask them if they could come up with a figure on what that would cost. And then, I don't know, maybe we can figure out some way to help. I don't know.
I guess my only feeling on that is it wasn't part of their budget to do such an elaborate, which you would need for a varsity, so I was trying to be sympathetic to their budget. As far as making it a varsity field and letting them see, I didn't want to be, hey, we're demanding this from you, my point of view, of course, then, hey, we're demanding this or we're not giving you land. Just because the varsity field's not out there. Us being able to tell them, I guess, that the baseball field, as is, opponent field getting moved, I think that has more to do with the fact that they're taking land up in that area, therefore it has to be moved. Does that make sense? Maybe. I mean, I would very much encourage what you just said, but I don't think I would vote no to convey the land if they said we don't have the resources or the funding to do an actual varsity field.
No, but I would, we could say, yeah, we would really strongly encourage it.
Mm-hmm. And I
I'd
think,
like to know that, hey, we're gonna find out how much it would cost and then kind of get an idea as to what we would need to do in order to afford something like that. And just so we have a little bit of, we feel more comfortable that, hey, this is probably the way it's gonna go, and then it'll free up Walsh and we'll be able to do other things with it. I'd like there to be a little, somewhat of a possibility of a guarantee.
I think we've encouraged it. And we did that by, I think it was
Okay,
nine
well,
kind of sending it back. Make sure no one in the audience thinks that we're against helping out the high school sports, because we're not. And that's not what this conversation is about, because we use Vietnam for high school softball, which is fine. We're not telling them to move and get out of city way. It's the fact that this one piece of property's only use has become that over time. Unfortunately, where it used to be a use for multiple other things. Scott had his hand up? Yeah. No?
he was just waving.
Oh, I had to scratch my nose, sorry. Oh, sorry.
We're at an
So their budget referendum was on the thought that they'd get all the land for free, so that's why it wasn't budgeted in for.
I would imagine so, because like Greg said, we do serve the same tax base. I mean, we charge the school district, well, they pass that cost on to the taxpayers, which is the same people we serve. It's
I
not,
can't speak to LB Clark specifically, but my understanding is once upon a time, the city owned all of the school properties. And at a point in time when they became not city property, but school property, the city chose to hang on to neighborhood park space next to the schools. And that's why we have two different mowing crews mowing grass by McGee and by LB Clark anyway. I don't think the city owns a remnant at Koenig. That's all school district. So frankly, if the city's insistent on, if you don't want to move the varsity field here, we want to see that varsity field move.
bless you.
There is some element of expense that would be required, if you will, for the conveyance, that the district and its consultants can take into account. Well, how much of a down payment would that be if you wanted to go with the varsity facility?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that at some point in time, we can come back and say, this is the cost for the pony, this would be the cost for making it varsity instead, and then just having a conversation at that point in time.
But as proposed, at least the city's bottom line would be, yeah, you get it for $1. And the cost of getting that pony league field moved and maintaining it in the future, knowing that outside of school hours, the city's is handling the bookings, the schedule.
And cost of maintaining.
And frankly, yeah, the cost of maintaining, and frankly, even if, and we're not looking to push this, again, we want to be friendly about this, but it certainly is on the table that if varsity baseball stays at Walsh, the city should be recovering its maintenance costs. Correct. To maintain a dedicated baseball facility that nobody else uses for baseball. That's a separate issue.
Right.
But I know this, we'll put this into a rather elaborate resolution to bring back to council, but is there a show of hands on the conveyance for $1 with at a minimum, relocating the Pony League. Now, they may come back and say, no, there's no stormwater pond here, and things are fine. You know, maybe at that point, the city doesn't need to see the Pony League field relocated, but I'm hearing with the stormwater there and still a regulation, but pretty short fence to parking and pedestrian areas, it's looking like it'd be the smarter thing to move that field.
I think it would be too. I mean, even access to playground and everything else is just more centrally located. I mean, for baseball and for football.
So at a minimum.
So your hand is up, if you were in support of that.
What are we voting?
At a minimum,
At a
we
minimum.
could convey the
Convey
land
it.
for $1 with them moving the Pony League field up where it is.
And doing the turf maintenance
And
and
the maintenance.
city continued scheduling rights outside of the school. Yeah, and with the, I think it goes without saying, but with the utility easements that are needed going along with it, because we still need to get our electric lines through there. Okay,
And it might be good to put a fence around that. I'll just add that in there.
That might change completely.
What's that?
They might move that. So
They could, right, but I guess given where it is,
does that?
they may find it their interest in the future anyway.
Where's the property line on the north side?
Pretty much at the tree line,
Because it,
where
the
the west
pond
is
is there.
extended. Does the property line show there, the north line of the city property currently?
It's, I mean, I believe it's kind of roughly, or this, you see that black line is, so I believe it comes straight down. It does go a little bit.
The fence is tucked a little bit in.
Okay, so
that could be here. Yep. Like those,
Can I ask, go ahead.
we're pretty far away looking down here, so the distances are pretty big.
Yeah.
They just put the pond there so you don't have to take out any trees.
Yeah, and it's, I think
Keep
it's
it
it's,
Closest to where they need.
it's probably at the low point on that property too, isn't it? We look at elevations.
You said elevation falls off going.
It does be, it falls off pretty quickly once you get at least right about past where that, the footprint of the pond is. Because we had asked early on, well, if it had to be a pond of that approximate size, could it be moved to the west? But at least one of the preliminary concerns was you might be fighting gravity to get there.
I'm further to the north.
Oh, further to the north, you are definitely gonna be going downhill fast. My perception at least, the fence in that corner, the north boundary fence is down a pretty good slope.
There is a fence back in there. At least there used to be. Growing up as a kid, I stopped at
And
fence.
they do pull a telephone to show, but it's.
Any-
Is that feedback useful and understandable to the school?
Very, yes, we appreciate that.
Thank you. We can have some more dialogue and, you know, I don't know that this will be back in 3 weeks, the next council meeting, but it'll be on a future agenda after the district's had an opportunity to digest it.
Get numbers and what they need to get for their due diligence and their school board's due diligence.
And Jamie will work up some awesome minutes from tonight that reflect the council's legislative intent as part of her last 2 weeks on the job. They'll be stellar. Anything else for the district representatives while we have? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you.
And congratulations again, 2/3 of the voters.
Yeah,
said
that's impressive.
Support our district.
That's hats off to you guys for getting it out there, getting the videos out there and having as many public sections as the library, community house, whatever else you have.
Because it said, don't vote for this, you hate your kids.
Oh. All right, we're moving on to B, which is to consider options for possible relocation and reuse of current Central Park bandstand versus demolition. Recommended action is to review staff report and provide direction.
I'll put Matt front and center on this, but as you know, with Central Park West 365, we assumed we were demolishing and we're getting rid of the bandstand. In round numbers, using fully charging for city forces and equipment, we're estimating higher than the city manager estimated, about up to possibly 35,000 to tear down and remove the bandstand. The question has come up because it is a roof and structurally sound supports that holds up a roof that can cover at least 1,600 square feet of space. is there a way that we could either deconstruct and rebuild? Not so likely given the way it's built. Or move, and we have had ice structure movers take a look at it, relocate it to another location, either repurposed as maybe a picnic shelter, more likely, honestly, storage, which we desperately need, whether it's on the east side near Neshota Park, whether it's up near Vietnam, over near Vietnam Veterans Park, also on the east side, or even at something proximate to the downtown, like at Vets Park or the DPW yard. Those options appear to be more expensive, and there are some real constraints, because dang it all, we got all these, a 40-foot wide building with the eaves that go beyond that, which Matt can speak to, is a challenge as to where you can move it, and how many times you encounter overhead lines that need to be relocated becomes a cost factor.
Would have a fire department practice burning it down? That way there's less to haul out.
You'd still probably have to strip, I don't know to what extent they can burn things anymore. I know you'd have to strip all the shingles off it and any hazard, anything that would be perceived as hazardous. I don't know where plywood sheathing fits in that. So honestly, I think if the ultimate decision is to tear it down, we're gonna ask Vinton, because they have a lot bigger pieces of machinery that can rip it asunder and put it in a box to go to the landfill than what we could do with our city crews. But Matt has taken a look at it as far as possibly moving it. Again, there's some net inherent value there to the structure, but it would mean spending more money than certainly we budgeted, a lot more money than we budgeted in this project to just get it out of there. So we wanted to bring this back to council, and I know I just glossed over it pretty briefly.
You covered pretty much all the highlights.
Detailed guy.
I'll give it a detail as we so-called need it. So yes, we, as part of the Central Park West project, is the demolition, relocation, salvaging of the existing band shelter. And we're there is that need for additional storage, and that need came a little more inherent when we were talking to architecture regarding the synthetic ice and the 200 sheets of ice, 3x3 panels. Roughly 200 of them need to find a home during the off season. So where do we put that? So that's been kind of driving, can we relocate the shelter? And Jared from Parks had reached out to Ice Movers and came up with a cost of about $9,800 to relocate it. That was an assumption that the structure was only 40 feet wide. The original thought or location to relocate it to was up at Vietnam Veterans Park, behind the ball diamonds, nice tucked away. Could be used for ultimately cold storage, so on and so forth. And in looking at it, well, the column to column is 40 feet wide. With the overhangs on there, you're closer to 49 feet. We could get it down Washington. We cannot get it down 22nd, and we could not get it down to Lincoln without taking off the overhangs on the east and west side. So we actually thought, well, okay, the north and south sides are sacrificial overhangs that were tacked onto the original trusses. And again, could we move it down the street that way? That got us to our minimum width criteria, but then we had to start looking at vertical clearances, and we couldn't get it underneath the traffic signals, the sign bridge at 22nd.
Could they shore blocking up, cut the legs, drop it back down, move it, and set it back up?
Yeah, that's how it's ultimately being considered, is we would actually separate the roof structure from the columns,
Supporting the roof, the truss structure is actually 4 16-inch deep I-beams. So those would actually stay intact to support the structure. We're at an overall height then of about 14.5 feet of structure, and we need about 5 feet above grade to the bottom of the existing structure. So we need roughly 19.5 feet. So by needing 19.5 feet, we run into cable and telephone cable crossings at 22nd and Jackson, and then at least 3 additional locations running up Lincoln. So that pretty much creates a challenge on how to get there. We have not talked to any utilities as to how. No challenge if you junk it.
Was that?
No challenge if you junk it.
That may be the conclusion at the end of the day.
And that 3 options right now are, we totally raise it and junk it. We try and salvage the trusses, the beams, and the columns. By doing that, the cost of our time goes up because we have to be a little bit more meticulous. And the third option, the more expensive options, is to relocate it to someplace. So Vietnam Vets, we're kind of saying it would be a nice location, but may not be totally cost effective.
Matt, you've looked at it a bit. There's some really fat telecom cables there. It's not just a cable come and drop your
Correct.
cable TV.
The significant one is at Jackson at 22nd. It's a nice.
That is a big one. I looked at it today.
Yeah.
So you'd said Lincoln. You looked at both, headed north on Jackson or Lincoln?
Jackson is even worse than Lincoln.
Okay.
So once we kind of looked at the route going up to Vietnam Vets, we looked at potentially or discussed potential other locations. 2 additional locations that popped up were Veterans Park and then down towards the DPW wastewater utility campus down there. The nice thing about the utility campus, public works area, Washington Street is wide open. We just have to get it out of the park and pretty much clear sailing into the parking lot area of the public works electric department. So we're golden there.
Do you have a
Next
map of that
challenge,
in your revised report, Matt?
that would be
Okay.
towards the end.
Okay, I'll pull that up while you continue.
That would, the challenge then is where to put it, if we get it down there. I'll jump differently over to Veterans Park. That was considered as an option. Mike had made comment of, okay, you could do kayak storage there, we could do some other cold storage there. That was viable until about 2.5 hours ago when I was starting to have conversations with Scott Hall about soils down there. And that led into the discussion of floodplain, poor soils, floodplain. So the cost to relocate just escalated significantly more than other. So additional, right now I'm kind of keying into back behind one of the sludge barns in this particular corner at the wastewater plant. So we can definitely get it in here. To get it back here, we had to remove fencing, about 150 feet of fence. And we would have to look at relocating those 2 campers. This one's a travel trailer, no additional structures around it, so it more or less hook onto it, relocate it. This one was a Class A build, get a hold of the individual.
We need Seagull's cooperation, obviously.
Yes.
Call it a temporary easement.
We haven't contacted anybody about any of that. Right now, it's all conceptual. Where do we want to go with this?
including just outright demolishing. Other locations that I had considered, possibly sticking it in here, that's where my guys park, so now I lose parking. Possibly up here, well, then it's potential, I don't wanna say eyesore, but it's a storage building in the middle of a parking lot. Not overly attractive. And then potentially down here, which is potentially some areas of reuse in the future. So we're kind of keying into that location.
Yeah, the down here areas would put it right next to the concrete pile and reprocessing area that we, at least I think the majority of the councils felt we want to get rid of anyway, get that clutter and that use off the lake front.
It saves you money though, doesn't it?
Yeah, or honestly, taking out some of the parking there, would.
No, I meant repurposing your concrete.
Oh, we want to do it. The thought had been, this place is to do it maybe other than right on Lake Michigan. Yeah, if we could find the right parcel.
But it's handy for your crew to have their equipment right there.
Yes.
Yeah. And they need another shop to keep equipment in, but it.
Someday we'll have the shop.
Now,
Not in any hurry.
before the meeting, Brian and I were having a brief discussion whether or not this would potentially get relocated immediately adjacent to the post office in Pool City Breweries. Jesus, this parking lot. It was just.
So that becomes a property acquisition issue and putting a ugly building in the downtown. Other than that.
And.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're, again, just brainstorming ideas.
Do we have room down off Memorial Drive where the Parks and Rec have a building?
What is just?
Yeah, well, is that tight? Do we own any other land? I didn't know if we owned any other land adjacent to it.
No, I don't think so.
Memorial Drive is wide open too.
Yeah, you couldn't, there's like a open kind of fenced in area behind that garage, you could never get the building yet, past the garage.
Next to the store, just.
You know where the boats are on,
Miles are.
next to the salt?
That's an open area where.
Right here.
Yeah.
It's an electric bed, I think there's a hydrant in here.
Get it out.
It's, I don't know, Google Earth or something, but Tim was just asking, if you go just to the south of the, if you go just to the south of the water filtration plant, what all happens there?
Probably just as cheap.
I think we've got a lot of utility.
I'm gonna say there's a lot of utility, water lines in and out, finding the sanitary sewer coming in there.
Yeah, that's, we have
Could you
time.
put it on a floating slab, that way we wouldn't have to dig down far enough to bother any of that stuff?
Well, here, this is all great discussion, but I guess we should probably hear what the number is first before we start deciding everywhere we
Right,
can put it. If
yeah.
it's a crazy number, we don't even have to go this far.
Is there any interest in?
36 to tear it down, 9,000 to move it.
Yeah, but there must be other costs.
There's a delta
96.
of about $40,000 to get it.
I'll let you go to the last page. Okay. The summary page.
9,600 was way too
That was
easy.
That was just picking it
Well,
up and
that
getting.
was just
Don't you want
relocating it.
demolition?
Demolition, DPW crews, or city staff, I'll put it that way. I'm figuring, 2 weeks, 6 guys, with our current equipment. So 35,000.
And honestly, if that's the council's direction, hey, we don't want to do anything beyond what we planned. I want to talk to Vinton too, because I think they could render that into demolition debris a lot faster than we could.
Oh, God, yeah. Because all we have is basically a small, backhoe. So in order to grab it, pull it, try not to damage any other property out there. It would be a little bit time taking, and then ultimately get it into small enough pieces to get into a dumpster. That's the reason why I was looking at a 2-week time period. Demolition and salvage, again, whether or not we had any interest in trying to salvage the trusses, the steel beams and the steel columns. basically I added an extra week. So basically we'd have to tear off the shingles, tear off the roof deck, and then try and pound that roof deck off and then separate each of the parts and pieces. So I added an additional week of labor. This was 52,000, relocating it.
Just on point two, the question is, that's great, but then what value are those assets to us? Or potentially to anybody that want to buy them? Used trusses and some really great steel beams. Sorry, please proceed.
Nope. And then whether or not we were looking at relocating at the various locations. And again, with relocating, we would have to, that 74,000, 75,000 is man hours to prep it, to actually relocate it, to demolish the existing concrete out there, to create new foundations, and then ultimately reconfigure, re-erect. That would be to get the shelter back in the state that it is today.
Still doesn't have walls.
It would not have walls, estimated probably another 50,000 to add walls.
It also wouldn't have a concrete pad, correct, just a concrete foundation.
Correct. At some point in the future, we would add a concrete floor. Something comparable as a new structure, we're looking at about 175,000 for materials and labor.
So that 175 compares to about 1.25 if we moved it and then tricked it out with exterior walls and a couple of garage doors.
Yep.
Round numbers.
Two garage doors and 2 service doors.
And electric, right?
Not this time. But yes, probably has to be electric.
Yeah, for about $40,000 more, you end up with covered storage that maybe gets surrounded with chain link fence, so it's more or less covered and secured. Is that worth it?
Well, and you're relying on ICE movers to do this job in a timely manner, right? I mean, is that?
Right now, they have availability in March to do it.
Yeah, I have zero trust in ICE movers to get the job done in a timely manner. I was on the board of our historical society for the county when they were contracted to move the Meany House, and that process dragged on well past their contracted deadlines. I mean, well past. And all of the fighting in the world did not get that job done or compensation made. So I would be leery to say if you really are, you know, in love with moving the structure, I would come up with a backup plan that says if it's not moved by a certain date, then we default to the tear down strategy. But we have to build tear down into the planning if moving doesn't get done.
We can't be holding up Vinton come the 1st of April.
Right.
To your point. And I think we could keep that backup in place.
Bill had his hand up and then I saw Bonnie.
Could we, I mean, people sell buildings all the time. Could we offer it to the public for a week or two just to see?
We've talked about that, and if the preference is not to do the added investment to relocate it for reuse, would somebody, again, with proper insurance coverages and those things, be willing to do it for salvage rights, or be willing to do it a lot cheaper than we could for the salvage rights?
We're still gonna have to get rid of this.
Right, I'm speculating, like, does a Franny Deer take it down and see some value in the salvage? I don't know if he's into salvage. I know he tears things down quite well.
Yeah, put all kinds of stuff.
So I'm gonna be gone tomorrow if you ask.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I had an inquiry from a member out at St. John's Church saying, what's the city gonna do with that? We've talked about a pavilion on our property. They might very well have the advantage of some volunteer labor, either at this end or that end. They're still gonna have to deal with moving it, and we'd have to, for any of these, we'd have to make sure we have a backup if the person we contract with doesn't get it done timely.
Bonnie?
To move the structure, are you including that cement, the whole cement bottom?
No, the concrete stage portion will get demolished. We would actually salvage that.
Because from what you just said about moving it and then putting walls up, it's almost as, it's almost a new structure, what you would pay for a new structure. When you said to move it and then put the walls up, I thought you said something like 100,000?
125,000 would get us walls.
Yeah,
So, compared to the 175, it would be about $50,000 savings.
well, but then the moving it is, what is, I don't see moving it, I thought 74,000, right?
Moving it is included in the 74,800. So just to get ice to move it is round numbers, $10,000.
But then you gotta have footings and foundations for each of those vertical supports to rest on.
And that's what brings you to the 74,875, call it round numbers.
Is there another structural moving business?
You know, just one more comment. At Silver Lake College, today, we were observing that those guys are actually going through it by hand and taking out the steel. My point is, metal is pretty expensive, is pretty fetching a higher price today. I heard copper had gone right through the roof practically compared to what it usually goes. And I'm just saying, could somebody take it down and let them salvage the steel? Maybe they do it, I don't know.
I looked or tried coming up with costs of new, the I-beams alone are approximately, because they're 40 feet long, are approximately $2,000 a piece. Are you gonna get that in salvage? Not even close. Even though they're probably like brand new.
Might get a quarter of that.
Each of the trusses, I wanna say are about $200, $200 to $300 a piece of something comparable.
Yeah.
But again, are you gonna get that for used trusses? No. But you start adding all that up and compare that to, if we opted to go to the salvage portion, Greg and I were talking about this briefly, earlier today. We salvage the trusses, the columns, the beams, okay, when are we gonna reconstruct it? Then we have to add money to it at some point in time to have this, but we could then relocate and put a roughly 40 by 40 structure up at Vietnam Vet at a point in time that we would have appropriate funds to do so. And that would be your cost savings is ultimately what you just salvaged out of materials. As far as a direction, that's ultimately up to the nine of you.
The lowest cost option, and even then, it's more than we were counting on using our own forces. Maybe we can get it cheaper. If the decision is pretty much trash it, haul it away, maybe somebody that could do it on a lot bigger equipment than we have.
They probably haven't gone in a day and a half.
Yeah, that. But the question had arisen, geez, and I think, you hate to see all that material just put to waste. Does it make sense? It's marginal. It's marginal to try to save it and reuse it.
Tracy?
I agree, I'm not sure it's worth the investment.
It's a whole lot of roof. You wouldn't build a storage building with a pitch like that.
You're assuming that when you move it, you aren't gonna create some sort of damage, even accidentally. And then the integrity of the structure could go into question, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So if we put it out publicly that, hey, you can get this lovely shelter for nothing if you tear it apart and take it away. And then we're not spending, they would have to show that we know what we're doing, we've got the insurance.
And we're happy to run with that if the
I'd like
council's direction is, you know what, we want to keep the cost of this to a bare minimum. If there's not a compelling case made really for trying to salvage it for city use, then either demo it or figure out a cheaper way yet to demo it or have somebody come take it that would take salvage value into account. That's untested right now. We got a little bit of time, a little bit.
Even if someone does that, remember, we're not cost free because we will have to get rid of the stage.
Sure, you can check the bills up, so maybe.
Just
Keep
everyone knows.
Did that get all the
But
steam
that-
out?
But the hard
We-
part,
It'll be
We
right,
can
it'll
break
be
that up.
significantly less.
Yeah, because we can break it up ourselves.
I guess at the end of the day, we know there's a need for storage. There's been a need for storage for Parks and Rec for quite some time. Matt had just brought up the point that we need a lot of space for these synthetic ice that's we put out at Project 365, obviously.
That will be on pallets too, so it's not like, it'll be 3 or 4 pallets worth of ice that you get.
Right.
Might be
So
pallets
we
on
have a
the
need for
cart.
storage now in that department, and that need has just arisen even more with the ice skating rink coming to us this fall.
And it won't go away. It'll be in a future CIP at some point. I've kicked it out of the CIP for a few years, and I know as we've reviewed it, we've discussed that long-term storage need. Particularly on the east side, quite honestly, where we have a lot of acreage between Vietnam and Walsh and have precious little storage. So it'll be back. Is there enough inherent value here in addressing that need? And I appreciate it. Matt notably, and working with Mike, has tortured this. But we're appointed needing some direction going forward.
I agree, it's expensive to do. I guess the only plus side, and I'm not speaking one way or the other, because we know we need storage whether it's this or not. The only advantage I guess we have here is 74,000 gets us started, and we can build walls as we get money. It doesn't have to be today, tomorrow, or if we do a new structure, it's 175. That would be the only advantage, if there's an advantage.
The nice thing about putting it at the wastewater plant, that's already a fenced-in storage area. So we wouldn't have to actually acquire an additional fence to make it a secured area. And then as time warranted, we could add additional walls to enclose it.
Again, I'm personally, for what it's worth, I'm good either way. If we say yes or if we say no, so I can see both sides of an argument there.
Further back.
Yeah. I mean, how much more storage does Park and Rec, have a need for? Because moving the stage is not gonna give us all of the storage Parks and Rec is looking for. It's gonna give us storage to put 3 pallets of skating rink and some additional equipment.
Well, I think this was 1,600 square feet. I think it'd be pretty significant.
Oh, so it'd be bigger than the 3 square, no?
Yeah, it's bigger than that. It's like 1,600 square feet, I thought Matt referenced.
Okay, no, yeah.
So it'd be pretty significant.
So then what does that comparable lease of storage space of 1,600 square feet go for? Again, do we need to purchase space when we could lease it somewhere?
Right now, DPW is leasing some storage.
We still
Unfortunately, I didn't get a cost on it.
Okay. Because that's my first thought is this a long-term solution, what we're talking about here? Or do we simply need a short-term solution and this is a good answer now? What does that come to in the long term? Can we store things temporarily somewhere else till we have a better plan,
Well, I mean, like a few pallets of ice, yeah, you could probably put in a storage garage.
Right.
Which adds to the operating budget in little increments as you go.
Yeah.
Probably, that's one thing, with it being a rectangle, it's made out of steel beams, it's not the sort of thing you easily add on to. I don't think you build it, that thing was built like a brick,
Right.
They really built it in those big steel beams framing it. Maybe over-engineered. Yeah.
Okay, so I see us coming out here with 2 things. A, we can move it. 2, we can demo it. Or 3, we can offer what Darla suggested and see if somebody out there wants to take it down for the cost of salvaging it. And then obviously we'd just be responsible for the concrete portion being removed, which is the stage and any beams, or not beams, but what goes in the ground. Condoms, thank you.
And I think your second and third options are both pretty much, council says, get rid of it and get rid of it the most cost-effective way possible.
We'll figure out 2 and 3 from there.
Yeah.
So I guess what Greg just said, we'll go with 1 or 2. So either keep it or it goes. So
Keep it and add $40,000 to $45,000 to our capital borrowing this year, because honestly, I can't think of a project to kick out.
now we're tight.
And over 10 years, with interest, maybe you're looking at 6,000 more a year in debt service to cover that cost.
So is there support to move it? If you would like to move it, raise your hand.
You mean to Vietnam, that's far,
To anywhere.
or I mean somewhere.
I think in all likelihood, public works is what I'm hearing, somewhere on that campus.
I'd have some support.
We got 2 people, 3 people. I don't know that I don't want to add anything more to our budget the way it is.
I'm gonna vote for both anyway, so.
Yeah.
I'm good with either moving it or getting rid of it.
I am too. I just know we need this.
I don't know which way to go.
Getting rid of it, we've got to make it work, and we will, even though we still got some fundraising to do on the project over here. Moving it, because we face some near-term expenses of moving a structure mover, we want to get paid right away, and we want to pay the cost of those foundations. Does mean we would bite off 45 to 50,000, say 40 to 50,000 more in costs that the council should leave here tonight being comfortable with adding to our capital plan.
Well, we put a $50,000 contingency on the park.
We need
So
it.
if we, but I'm saying, if we didn't need the $50,000 contingency on the park, there would be
I
stage
agree.
moving.
Yeah,
money.
I'm in no way ready to say that's the case right now. I'm feeling we need that contingency.
Yeah, contingency also falls back to lighting over on the show.
Right. I didn't say it was the answer.
Right, it's an answer, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing 1, 2, I saw 3 hands in support of that. Those in favor of demolishing it? 1,
Or-
2, right, the second plan, the most cost-effective way to get rid of it.
Okay.
Getting it out
1,
there,
2,
not
3,
for our
4,
reuse
5,
as cheaply as possible.
6,
Like I said,
and you got one on.
I'm fine either way, so.
You know, could this be the last time you vote for both sides of something?
This is the first time. We'll proceed then to see what are the options out there to maybe drive down that estimated $35,000 down cost. But
I mean, but I
we
would.
wanted to let you know that this isn't something that's just been blown off. Matt did a pretty deep dive on this.
No, I'm pretty impressed of the plan, because I saw that on the agenda and I said, wow, I really like the idea of being able to, repurpose it. I think that's something that there was cost effective and we could repurpose that for something to help the city. I think the direction of that is great, and it's.
And again, I will follow up with the person who's one contact from a local church. I don't, and we can certainly share our numbers. I don't know that that's feasible for them, but let them know.
I would just contend that any offer to raise or salvage the building comes with a firm deadline that Vinton approves from us to say, hey, if that falls apart and isn't done by this drop dead day, we can still tear the stage down and stay within our time frame that we have proposed. So as long as that's done,
I think it effectively
can salvage it.
becomes something like the first week in March, it better be gone.
Absolute worst would be the middle of March. That would give us
Does it give you
the
that
2
much time?
weeks to get rid of it.
The I-beams are pretty large on there, aren't they?
Yeah.
So somebody's gonna have to have some serious equipment taken apart.
I mean, and Vinton doesn't have any opportunity or ability to salvage and resell anything. That's not in their scope of work.
Again,
That's
we
all
didn't
they-
include that option in their spec. We did have a discussion at the pre-construction meeting about moving it, and that's not really their, God knows they've got big equipment, big low boy trailers and that, but yeah, that was pretty much not in our wheelhouse. And I don't know, Matt, the night is young. One more question. Is there like a sill, the equivalent of like a sill plate that runs around and is attached to those I-beams? Or there are just a few points where wood superstructure is attached to those beams?
The above and below each of the I-beams, there's actually a wood sill plate that the trusses attach to. And then that sill plate is actually bolted to the I-beam.
So it'll be easy to like lift the wooden roof off that plate. And there's your exposed steel to salvage.
Wouldn't be overly complicated.
I've bugged him with, hey, could you do like a modular home, although it wasn't designed for that, and kind of, maybe you could do that if it wasn't for that 16-inch steel beam that's running all the way around. Could you tilt it sideways and move it down the street? Okay, so we take that as direction. We planned to demo it, get rid of it. That remains the plan, basically to get it off the site, out of the city's ownership in the cheapest way possible.
And we always have time for storage, yeah, because we won't need it.
We thought about Amish people. Can't we just get 100 Amish dudes to come in here?
We're busy.
Take the bolts out?
And then they're gonna have to.
And 50 head of oxen.
I've been trying, I've been working the latest.
Okay, then here's a
George.
reminder, we have a work session on city goals. That is next week, Monday, January 30th. After that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jeff. Second by Darla. Any council discussion? Seeing none, our one and only vote will be an all in favor vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you and good night.